to Ty and Lee's review on the Equalizer Part 2. We try to give you as much information as possible without spoiling anything.
That way you can decide whether or not you want to see this movie.
And we release a Remember When video every Tuesday.
And a new movie review every Saturday. Also, as always, if you're short on time, there are timestamps in the description below that can fast forward you to any part of the video.
Oh. Gucci gang.
This review was especially difficult for us this time around. Me and Ty had pretty drastic differences of what we thought of the movie overall.
Yeah, and watching the end of the Equalizer 1, I was like, okay, they gotta have a real dang good reason to make the Equalizer 2, because why?
You can only kill so many people in Home Depot with saw traps.
Exactly. And, you know, the Equalizer 2 starts off exactly where the Equalizer 1 finishes. And that was very worrisome for me, because it's just this whole back and forth of different scenarios of him helping people, him killing people, and there's a lot of these like throwaway characters that come up in the film and are never used again. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
why are we
like
here
this.
again? Why are we here again?
Yeah, it's very clear that they're trying to shove this message down your throat. Just like the first one, they really want you to know that he's this fatherly figure. And in this one, they want you to know that he's this unsung hero where everybody else comes first and he comes second, no matter what happens. And this is present throughout the whole movie.
So, even with this going on, it finally gets focused. About 45 minutes, I would say, through the film.
Yeah.
Something extremely bad
Second
happens.
act around there.
Yeah. Something extremely bad happens to one of his friends. And I feel like this is where the movie takes off. And my fear was that they were going to still do like the deviation thing where they'd jump back and forth, and then the main plot would just kind of be an afterthought. They didn't do that this time. Thank you, Antoine Fuqua, for correcting that mistake, because it made it an enjoyable movie for me. I actually cared about the plot and the character this time.
And see, this is a big difference between me and Ty here, is I really thought that they took too much away from the main plot. Granted, it was better than the first one. The pacing was a little bit faster. They didn't have like two different stories. It was really only one. What was the guy from Moonlight? What's his name?
Ashton Sanders.
Ashton Sanders. He plays a young teenager in this movie that he's in the ghetto, so he struggling with school, drugs,
Gangs,
and a Robert's character is trying to get him on the right path. And while this is happening, this huge main story where these people are getting really mad at Robert's character and they want to kill him, that's always put on aside, and he focuses on this side, and that was really frustrating for me, and it slowed the pace down.
And I have to disagree with that, because I feel like Ashton Sanders' character was roped into the main plot and used very effectively. And even though it kept flashing back to him, he was a part of that main plot, and obviously without spoiling anything, he becomes a main character, and you care about him. He does a good job.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think this movie should have just been a TV show.
Yep.
It really just should have.
Absolutely.
The way the plot goes and all these side quests and things like that, the pacing just makes sense for it.
Right, that was my thought exactly.
Right.
Like, this could have been like a 7 or 8 episode Netflix original, and it would have done great. Denzel Washington would have sold the hell out of it.
Oh yeah, and I think it would have added more, and the director could have done more of what he wanted to do. It kind of feels like he runs out of time. He's not telling the full story.
Oh. Gucci gang.
Denzel Washington is a star, and he shows why he's a star in this film. You can throw him into anything, and he's just going to perform. He probably is better in this film than he was in the first one. And like the first one, he has great synergy with his co-star. Ashton Sanders is great. He plays the teenager, and they interact quite often in the film. In fact, a little too much for my liking. But whenever they're on screen together, it's believable, and you can sense a bond.
Yeah, the first time they appeared in the film together, I was like, okay, another side quest.
Yep.
Like, we're not going to see this kid ever again. But the kid is a central part of the movie, like we said, in the plot.
Yeah.
And there is one scene in particular that blew me away, where Denzel Washington pulls Ashton out of this gang, basically embarrasses the kid, and takes him out in the hallway and has a father-son moment with them. Very intense, very believable. One of those scenes where you see Denzel Washington as Robert McCall. You don't see him as Denzel.
Yeah, it reminds me very much of like old sports films where they're having a prep talk in the locker room, like that type of thing. Very intense, high energy, yelling. It's very, very well done.
Definitely. Those two are the highlight of the film.
For sure.
They spotlight everything good about the movie. And Melissa Leo from the first film makes an appearance. She plays a very important character. Bill Pullman as well. He comes back. And the villain is played by Pedro Pascal.
Narcos boy.
The boy from Narcos.
Yeah.
And from Game of Thrones too.
All right, true.
And he is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, amongst the stellar cast, he is kind of a letdown.
Yeah, it's especially in comparison to the Equalizer 1, he is just not as strong as the villain. You do see him more, so he's highlighted more, but I mean, if you highlight someone who doesn't do as well, it
Takes away from the film.
Yeah, so that's a little unfortunate.
Oh. Gucci gang.
So my main issue with Equalizer 1 was the editing, the cinematography, and the directing.
Totally agree.
And I feel like the director, Antoine Fuqua, really corrected these problems in Equalizer 2. And I was really looking for it. I was really like trying to dissect the movie.
Yeah, being picky.
Yeah, being picky and just kind of like looking for the problems. And I feel like he learned. He didn't have those weird edits where it showed flashes of Robert McCall's face in different angles, and didn't have that weird slow motion walk with explosions in the background that circa 2002, 2003. And, you know, I feel like he made a seamless movie. It was palatable for me.
Yeah. And I agree, the editing is miles better. The cinematography is great. There's some sweet shots, especially with like guns where you're looking down the barrel with them. Very, very, very awesome shots. But for me, Antoine still just didn't step up to the plate here. I think the directing is still all over the place. We don't really have this coherent story like he wanted to deliver. I think he's way too much involved with the side characters, and he's just not focused enough with the main story, and that just takes me out of it a little bit too much.
And I disagree. I think Antoine Fuqua is showing his improvements here. The first one ends with Robert McCall as a vigilante, and it's clear what his intentions are, and the second one starts off exactly like that. So I think he's trying to have a very seamless gap between the films where he can really take the plot from the second one and run with it. Because I think he probably realized that the first one was a little bit of a back and forth.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a cat and mouse as far as the actual plot. And in this one, I feel like he stays very focused. He basically stayed on track. Basically, I say basically because it's not a perfect movie. But
Yeah, definitely not a perfect movie.
for me, it was watchable.
Yeah, and for me, it's just a little bit too much all over the place.
Oh. Gucci gang.
Our honorable mention for this movie has got to be Denzel Washington.
I would agree.
He's just a stud. I swear you can throw him in any movie, and that movie is going to be great. You're at least going to have good acting at the bare minimum.
Definitely. Denzel does a great job. And on the flip side, the dishonorable mention is Pedro Pascal, the villain.
Yep.
He seems very unsure of himself, and he wasn't very compelling for me.
He just wasn't Narcos.
He wasn't like he was in Narcos. I mean, he wasn't laughable, but
True.
he seemed like he was having a real internal battle of good and evil.
He just didn't sell it, and that's the problem.
Didn't sell it.
Yeah.
He was a little like Kylo Ren for me.
Sure. Great comparison.
Yeah, where he was just like, I'm kind of good, but no, I'm really
Right.
bad. But I don't know. So yeah, it didn't really do it for me.
Oh. Gucci gang.
Overall, the Equalizer 2 is a big step up from the Equalizer 1. Doesn't mean it doesn't have its problems. Equalizer 1 wasn't a great film, so making a movie that's a little bit better isn't extremely hard to do. So I think they just fixed the problems that were present in the Equalizer 1 and just made a more palatable film. I mean, Denzel does a great job. The plot is more easy to follow and more focused. I would give the movie a 6 out of 10.
For me, I feel like I was watching a downgraded version of John Wick. The pacing in this movie is just not great. I think the directing is all over the place. The acting is better, and it is a better movie than the Equalizer 1. But I mean, the premise is not that good for the Equalizer 1. This is a much better. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching our review. And we would love to hear your feedback below. Subscribe, follow our socials, and all that juicy.
Definitely. We will be reviewing a very cool Tom Cruise movie this upcoming Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. And next Friday, Mission Impossible Fallout comes out. So we'll be reviewing that. We'll see you guys then.